Yo, Lord Willin, Jeff Canarsie, Mob Talk Radio. Check it out. Yo, we stay quiet like Russell Buffalino when things will get ugly like Pesci's death in Casino. Who do we know? No one, nobody. But we're all well respected like Della Croce and Gotti. I know wild nights, Havana nocturne. Light up a cigar and watch your spot burn. You'll get patty whacked, I'm tough like Irish dock workers. Rubber guys with guys, hooligans and block lurkers. Corner berserkers, street savvy soldiers. You owe, you better pay. Don't make me say I told you. Code you don't betray, I say what I mean. Providence and Brooklyn all the way to the Bean. I'd rather be unseen, like Vinny the Chin. I don't gotta go to Vegas to see cities of sin. Pull the pin, drop bombs like Danny Green. I write homicide like the murder machine. Lansky Luciano, mastermind the racket. Up in the clam house with a million in my jacket. Move around when the streets get darker. Pay homage to real bosses like Gambino and Patriarcha. Mob talking, but you don't talk to the mob. Lord Will and Jeff Canarsie, we stay on our job. This is Mob Talk, straight from the streets. Mob Talk, the life over beats. Lord Will and Jeff Canarsie, bringing you the real. Kill all rats, you already know the deal. This is Mob Talk.
You're a good debater and you're not afraid of a fight. So why have your comments off? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I've turned them on for a lot of things.
On your shorts you do.
Right. In some of my lives, I think they're on. But almost as soon as I turn them on, there's photos of my family's homes.
Okay.
What's the address?
Yeah.
And at what point, and I just want to clarify.
Yeah, please.
I don't have to take that abuse.
Agreed.
Like, I don't come to work and slap the dick out of their mouth. Like,
kind of why do you have a disdain for informants in your opinion?
I don't disdain them. I downright fucking hate them.
Okay.
That's okay. But see, this is why I can say it. That guy Jeff's crazy. He's on medication. I have a disdain for them because no man should ever go to prison on the words of another man, number one. Number two, in 90% of the cases you look at, the informant has done more vile and disturbing crap than those that are being accused. Number three, I find it oxymoronic when a man, Joey Merlino, because everybody knows who he is, he goes in front of a judge, they can bring up everything he's ever been accused of, including murders and whatever else. Even though he's acquitted, it doesn't really matter because it's a character judgment. But yet in that same case, you can't turn that around and say, well, let's judge the rat. Judges don't allow that. So for me, it's like you're walking in, you're already behind the eight
And
ball.
now it's time for Mob Talk Radio with your host, Jeff Canarsie.
All right, everybody, and here we are. It is Saturday afternoon. And just right off the top, tonight, 8 o'clock p.m. on YouTube, we're going to be live talking about the bullshit between New York and Philadelphia and a bunch of other things. What I want to talk about today is very important. Throughout the years, ever since that Philadelphia indictment came down, I have covered the informant in that case. Nobody else covered him. They just typically seem to cover the big name informants like Gravano and etc. However, Anthony Persiano, let me see if I can throw a photo of this goofball for a second. 1 second. All right. And the reason why the person in the middle whose face is blocked out is because she is a victim of Anthony Persiano and his fraud. Anthony Persiano is this asshole right here on the left side. He was the informant in the Philadelphia mob case. And anytime you start talking about informants, right, you guys have heard me say throughout the years that informants break the law. They continuously do that while they're under the jurisdiction of the FBI. And a lot of people like to combat that by saying, oh, that's not true. I'm about to prove to you that that's true specifically in this case. And what truly, let me minimize something really quick. What makes this weird is the indictment, and the case is 5 years old now. It goes back to 2019. You have guys that are getting out of prison now for those for everything that was alleged about them, convictions, plea deals, whatever the case may be. And Anthony Persiano still has not been sentenced. It's been 5 years. It's odd to me because there have been 12 delays in sentencing Persiano for his crimes. That is odd. Now, the next time he's supposed to come up in federal court is going to be in August. And I can tell you what, from all of the cases I ever kind of looked at, the trials, whatever you want to call it, I have never in my life come across somebody whose sentencing gets delayed 12 times. And nobody's talking about it. Nobody's uttering a word. Everybody wants to talk about Gravano and all that fucking nonsense that he brings, but nobody's talking or asking questions as to why the feds have not held Persiano and put him in prison. And we're going to show you his cooperation deal. We're going to go through a bunch of stuff today. It's going to be a little long-winded, but I want everybody to understand this is not what happens in the system. Usually guys will testify, and once everything's over, within a year after testifying, or even 6 months, you'll look at J.R. Rubio, that little puke. He was sentenced about a year after everything. He went and did his time, and that was it. Persiano is still out. He's still out. And what makes this crazy is you might say, okay, well, why? Why is Persiano, why has he not been sentenced? Why are there delays? Well, typically, you have a couple reasons for that. Number one, I've never seen this happen this many times, okay? Number two, sometimes guys are still active. They're active cooperators, which means they're still giving information to the feds about something, which is why he hasn't been sentenced, because he's still working for them. The problem is there's nothing to substantiate that. That would be me sort of throwing shit against the wall and hoping it would stick. That's the reality in this situation, because if they were good, first of all, they can't use Persiano as a witness because he's awful. And you're going to find out why he's awful here in a few minutes. But his words mean nothing. Even the head, the supervising agent of the FBI special agents in this case, said he didn't believe a word Anthony Persiano ever said, that the guy was a liar through and through. And he suggested they do not take his information as being credible, nor should they ever use him as a witness. He was that fucking awful. That awful. And so with that being said, sometimes they like to use informants to supersede a federal indictment, which all that means is, okay, they've arrested 12 guys. They've charged them. We've got them locked up. Now it's supersede and bring even more charges. And typically that's what you see in a lot of big mob cases, at least back in the day. They would get them all locked up, then they supersede into much bigger crimes. The problem is the FBI is not going to wait 5 years to supersede. They're just not. They do that very quickly. You know, let's throw out these little couple of charges we got, get them locked up. Now we're going to really hammer them with the RICO charges. So I don't believe in this case they're going to do that. And sort of the directive from the FBI has been concerning South Philadelphia is, listen, unless you're getting murders or narcotics, stop wasting money down there, because they're not doing anything. They don't care about fraud. They don't care about extortion so much, because look at all the cases that have come out of Philadelphia in the last 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. It's all bullshit. It's bullshit. It's gambling, extortion, and small charges that don't amount to shit. And the other thing too is you have to look at how guys were sentenced in this federal case in Philadelphia. Anyway, they were given the minimum sentences, so there was not a pressure to hammer. Okay, so I don't believe this is going to supersede. Now, could Persiano still be providing information about Philadelphia? Sure, absolutely, but for 5 years. So we kind of got to look at Persiano himself. 12 times this has been delayed, and it just, I don't get it. And the problem with it is there's so many victims of Persiano, and I'm not even talking about the mob guys, the people he ripped off. And we'll get into how he ripped people off and everything else. But the reality is usually they're still acquiring information. I don't know any other reason why they would be withholding this unless maybe there's some health stuff going on or whatever. I just don't know. But it's a little odd, to say the least. And if it were to supersede, or if it was going to be in another mob case, I'm sure we'll find out eventually either. But I don't think that that's what's going on here, because I even informants that are 10 degrees above Persiano usually are sitting down and they unveil everything, like immediately. They don't say, okay, well, because everybody knows he's a fucking rat now, so it would make no sense to keep him wearing a wire on the streets, because everybody knows who he is. That's why I don't buy it. So the person that you see in the middle of the photo is a victim of his who I know personally, who reached out to me a couple of years ago when this all started. Persiano ripped her off, and she had no idea that he was a Mafia informant. And so when all of this started to happen, and what you see is her giving a check to him, to his LLC, which ripped off dozens of people for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay. When she first figured all this was going on, she actually did try to contact the FBI because she wanted her fucking money back. And at every turn, the FBI was aggressive with her and told her essentially to shut her fucking mouth. And the reason why they did that is because if this gets out, the witness, which Persiano was going to be, is a problem for the FBI. But once again, I go back to the FBI supervisory agent saying, I don't believe a word this guy has to say. So from day one, they didn't buy anything that this guy had to say. But, the supervisory agent comes along and gives his sort of opinion that they shouldn't use him for anything. It ultimately, at the end of the day, is not up to him. Okay. So this lady who you see, who I'm not going to tell you who she is, and that's why her face is blacked out to protect her identity. Like I said, she tried to go to the FBI and they badgered her. They threatened her. And so there's no way for her to ever get her money back. She was bankrupted by this fucking guy. She's just one of some 24 that were bankrupted by him. And she tried to do the right thing by the problem is anytime you wanted to even file a civil case, which I'm going to show you some examples of some civil cases against him, you can't find them because the FBI is protecting him. But like I said, she's one of some 24 people who got ripped off and had their life savings stolen from a fucking cooperator. And the FBI has done nothing but fear-mongering with these people. So who is Anthony Persiano? Well, according to the feds, he was CS1 in the Philadelphia mob indictment that goes back 5 years. Like I said, some of these guys have gotten out, yet Persiano still wades in the water wherever the fuck he is. I heard he's in Jersey or Nevada. Take your pick there. Don't know which. But we have to get to the misconduct because that's what I want to show you guys. So Persiano, how does he even end up with the feds to begin with? And he ends up with them after a pawn shop robbery in April of 2014. And what happened was Persiano staged a robbery in New Jersey of a pawn shop in Union, New Jersey. Persiano had the pawn shop robbed and used insurance fraud to entice the owner of said pawn shop to play ball and go along with it. And this is what leads him to the feds. And when he's arrested, and he begins to talk, like I said earlier, the supervisory agent involved overseeing the special agents stated in documents, which you can go out and get, he did not believe a word of what Persiano claimed, and that all Persiano was trying to do was get underneath the charges. And that's the supervisory agent in charge. Persiano was no stranger to the feds and to trouble. And we're going to take a little step back. In August of 1991, this is how stand-up this guy is. In August 24th of 91, Anthony Cavallari was shot to death in South Philadelphia, and police suspected that Persiano was the shooter. However, Persiano was not arrested or questioned about that murder and the police would continue to investigate that crime. 19 months later, on January 15th of 93 at 11:17 a.m., Persiano was arrested on unrelated weapons charges and transported to the Major Crimes Unit of the Philadelphia Police Department for processing. After receiving his Miranda warnings, Persiano declined to make a statement on that charge. That afternoon, a couple hours later, Detective William Skoll, the lead detective in that murder investigation of Cavallari, was notified of Persiano's arrest. Although Detective Skoll was in court on another matter at the time, he instructed that Persiano should be processed normally like any other arrestee. Later that day at 6 p.m., Persiano was taken to the police administration building to be fingerprinted, photographed, and arraigned. At 2:30 in the morning, January 16th, while Persiano was still in custody but not even arraigned on those weapon charges, Detective Skoll accompanies him to the detention area of the police administration building upstairs from the homicide unit for interrogation about that murder. Okay, so at 2:30 in the morning, by 4:45, this motherfucker is singing. After being told at 4:45 a.m., after being told the evidence that was implicating him in the murder, Persiano again received Miranda warnings and then confessed. It took him all of an hour and a half to rat himself out. Then signed a statement at 5:40. Hour and a half, he sang. From day one, he couldn't stand up to the pressure. So it's no shock to me that he becomes what he becomes. So in this indictment, and prior to that, okay, Anthony Persiano would be charged with wire fraud as a result of the pawn shop thing. And that's the first business he truly rips off. And it was known as Business One, located in Union Township in Union County, New Jersey. Business One acted as a pawn shop / check cashing place. Victim Company One was headquartered in St. Paul, Minnesota, and provided insurance and general liability insurance to Business Number One. From April 19, 2014 to November 2014, Anthony Persiano defrauded Victim Company One by submitting false insurance claims to the company for inflated losses attributed to a staged robbery of Business Number One, which we know as the pawn shop. From November 3rd, 2014 to November 13th of 2014, Persiano, through the business, received $175,025 from Victim Company One, which was transferred through wires to Citibank account to Business One. So in other words, Persiano and Victim Company One's Citibank account in Minnesota, they used to transfer to his own account, ripping him off for over $200,000. Under count one, it says having unlawfully and intentionally conspired to devise a scheme and artifice to defraud and obtain money and property, namely $175,000 by means of false and fraudulent pretenses, representations, and promises, and to do so by means of interstate wire transmissions. Count one, and this is very important, count one carries a maximum fine of $250,000 and 20 years in federal prison. However, underneath the predicates is this terminology, and you have to pay attention to this. Twice the gross amount of any pecuniary loss sustained by any of the victims of the offense. In other words, they're going to pay out double. He's going to have to pay double fine. Under count two, which he was charged, mail fraud, which includes $250,000 fine and 20 years in prison. Okay, it's the same exact terminology. So right off the bat, if he's not becoming an informant, he's looking at a $500,000 fine and 40 years in prison. 40 years. So even if we pretend he's never been in trouble before, and even if those sentences were maxed out and concurrent, he's still going to get hammered with 15 years regardless. But because he's an informant, we have to look at the deal he signed with the feds. And keep in mind, the person you see in the screen in the middle, he stole $100,000 from. And he did that while under the FBI's watch and payroll. And so when we talk about plea deals, right, the defendant agrees to plead guilty, saving the courts from a costly trial, which is really bullshit. They're getting a good deal, and that's the bottom line. Judges can refuse those deals, but they never really do. they can disagree with the guidelines and call for sentencing, and they can scoff at the prosecution's recommendations for that. And they can also take into account the defendant's service to the government and being a fucking rat. So I'm going to pull up his plea agreement because it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Let me just move a couple of things over here. Is this the plea agreement? Nope, that's lawsuit shit. Here we go. You guys are going to love this. I think that's it. Okay, this is his plea agreement, and this is from Richard Coughlin, Esquire, Chief Federal Public Defender, Federal Public Defender's Office, 800 Cooper Street, or Suite 350, Camden, New Jersey. RE plea agreement with Anthony Persiano. This is from the U.S. Department of Justice, District of New Jersey. Mr. Coughlin, the letter sets forth the plea agreement between your client, Anthony Persiano, and the United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey. This office charges, keep in mind, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of fraud charges. He just didn't do this to one person. He did it to 24, 20-some people. But they're only charging him with 2 counts. And these are the charges that he's going to face. Conditioned on the understandings specified below, this office will accept a guilty plea from Anthony Persiano to a 2-count information, which charges him with count 1, having unlawfully and intentionally conspiring to devise a scheme and artifice to defraud and obtain money and property, namely $175,000 by means of materially false and fraudulent pretenses, representations and promises, and to do so by means of interstate wire transmission, contrary to Title 18, okay, which is in violation of Title 18. Count 2, having devised a scheme or artifice to defraud and obtain money and property by false and fraudulent pretenses or misrepresentations, i.e. mail fraud. If Anthony Persiano enters a guilty plea and is sentenced on these charges and otherwise fully complies with all of the terms of this agreement, this office will not institute any further criminal charges against Anthony Persiano with regard to the conspiracy to commit insurance fraud and the staged robbery of the pawn shop in Union, New Jersey. So in other words, he's become a rat as long as he keeps telling him stuff, and he pleads guilty to those 2 stupid fucking charges, which I'm going to tell you the guidelines for that and what they were going to give him at the time. But they're also going to drop some 24 other charges that are pending, which the Newark office and the Pennsylvania State Police are investigating him for. So how do the people that have been robbed ever get their money back if they're not going to charge him? Because if you haven't been charged with something, it's kind of hard to take them to civil court. And it's really hard to take somebody to civil court when you can't fucking find them. All right. I'm going to pull up another. I'm going to pull this up really quick. 1 second. This is one of the victims when she found out, and I've blacked out her face because I don't want her information out there. This is what she posted. The face you make when you find out the guy that stole your money is in witness protection and was a rat. Piece of shit rat. That's what she posted when she found out he was an informant, which she didn't know. So let's go a little bit further here. All right. Okay, so here is what the prosecution recommendations were for what he's done. Keep in mind, that's a 40-year term. Worst case, you get 15 served concurrent or consecutive, whatever the case may be, but he wouldn't have gotten a whole lot of time because these guys never do, right? But this is the bottom line. For count 1 and 2, Persiano may be required to serve a term of supervised release for no more than 3 years on both counts, which will begin at the end of any sentence that the court hands down. Supervised release for bankrupting some 24 fucking people. Then they're going to throw out the case in the pawn shop, which they didn't believe from day one, but they charged him with anyway. But now they're going to take that off. 3 years supervised release. So if you guys have any ideas about defrauding people, that's the way you do it, I guess. But it goes further. He may be required to serve no more than 2 years for counts 1 and 2, which may run consecutively. Also mentioned, like I said, is the staged pawn shop robbery, which he's never going to get nailed for. So the government is suggesting no more than 3 years supervised probation. Just give him supervised. But they're telling him in the paperwork, but the judge may decide that you have to do prison time. And if so, your 40-year sentence is going to go to 1.5 years, 8 months with good time behavior. This is what the government does. It's absurd to me. Absurd that they can do this. Because how's she going to get her money back? How's anybody going to get their money back? So I'm going to pull this up because we're going to talk about his companies for a second. Let me just pull this up. And I'm doing this because so many people keep talking about all this fucking nonsense. Talk about the real fucking problems with the Justice Department and what rats get away with. All right, so Code Red Fire and Restoration LLC. That was a company that was owned by Persiano. Basically, during Hurricane Sandy, they come in, they restore everything in the house, your insurance pays him, blah, 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 blah. But he was fraudulently doing things, okay? And it was owned by Persiano. And it was a fire and water restoration business which operated from 2014 to 2015. And you have to keep 2015 in your mind because he's still committing fraud in 2015. And he's committing fraud in 2016. He goes to the feds in 2015. They kept allowing him to do this shit. All right. From January 2014 to December of January 2015, he defrauded 2 companies by diverting a portion of insurance payments that were due to homeowners who were his customers, and he used those funds to pay for his own business expenses. Persiano would enter into contracts with homeowners in Philadelphia and New Jersey without their knowledge. Persiano would endorse checks that were made out to multiple payees, including those homeowners and policyholders, and the bank that held the mortgage on the property. So in other words, homeowners were expecting a check, and Persiano stole it without doing anything. He also used those checks to pay for personal expenses, and in all cases didn't have the money to finish the work to restore the property to its original conditions, which was supposed to be provided in the contracts to the homeowners. And December 15th, 2016, keep in mind, he becomes a federal rat in 2015. In 2016, in New Jersey, Persiano receives a check for $22,124.33 from Victim Company 2. And he puts it in the Code Red Fire Restoration account, which was his personal account. So in 2016, after he's already become a federal informant, he's still putting illegal money into his accounts. So like I said, in 2015, he becomes a cooperator. The Newark Division of the FBI and the Pennsylvania State Police were looking at some dozen cases of fraud and wire fraud and all of this stuff. Newark Division had about 6 or 7 different cases. The Pennsylvania State Police, forget how many they had, but they all had cases against him, and they were all working on it because people that had gotten ripped off went to them. All of those cases that were building against him, some 24, suddenly went away. They were squashed by the FBI. Once they took over Persiano as an informant, all those cases left. All those cases went away. It's worth noting that Persiano's brother-in-law was a detective in the Newark Division, who I'm sure helped a little bit. So it means that he's still defrauding people even after he joins the federal government. The Pennsylvania State Police were investigating a bunch of his businesses for fraud as well. The Newark branch, like I said. The PSP, which is the Pennsylvania State Police, closed that investigation and handled all of the files to the FBI, which is the right thing to do. This is what we were working on. This is what we had. And the FBI dropped all of it. They dropped every single bit of it. And so naturally, you would think this, right? Okay, well, he's an informant. This is what typically happens. But how do, in this particular case, how do the people ever get their money back? How do they ever acquire anything he stole if the FBI refuses to press charges? And then you're going to tell me he goes from 40 years to fucking 3 years house arrest or whatever the fuck? And here's what's interesting. I'm going to show you a couple of things really quick, and then I'll wrap it up. So this, what I'm about to show you here, is a lawsuit. And it goes from 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay? And I'm not going to go through the whole lawsuit. I'm just going to show you. And you guys probably, let me see if I can show you a little bit, but I'll read it. This matter becomes before the court, and I'm not going to mention all of the plaintiffs or the defendants, but the defendant is Assured Fire Water Restoration Company, LLC, Anthony Persiano. The plaintiff's motion for default will be denied, and the defendant's motion to set aside default will be granted. Plaintiffs in the case are Florida residents. The individual defendants are all New Jersey residents and shareholders of Assured Fire, Water, and Restoration, a New Jersey corporation engaged in business of property restoration and repair. Plaintiffs claim the defendants breached their contracts between them by borrowing $150,000 to pay for 3 specific restoration projects and failing to use the money for those projects and didn't make timely repayments. The defendants claim that the money was used for alternate projects because the 3 specified projects fell through, and that such a shift was contemplated in the agreement, and that the $150,000 was not a loan, but rather the first part of the investment. So in other words, they rip people off. This is a lawsuit. And you may say, well, why is this important? It's important because people are trying to go after what's owed to them. And at every turn, they keep getting closed down. Listen, it's not right. How about another lawsuit? Hold on, we'll go to the next year. And this is a notice of Persiano being sued and being served paperwork. Hold on one second. Let's see. Here's another one. Hovatter, Friedman, and Sapatelli and Levy, LLP. And this is from Mount Laurel, New Jersey. And this is a company and they've taken to the Superior Court of New Jersey Law Division against Anthony Persiano and his company. And this was in 2018. They started to try to get money back. And nothing has happened. All this is a certificate of service that they're suing them. Unbelievable. And at every turn, they've been stopped. All right, that's the same one. Hold on one second. Let me pull this up. All right. Here's another one. All right, this is from Synchrony Bank versus Anthony Persiano. And this is from 2021. 5/3/2021, bank is filed a contract debt collection lawsuit against Anthony Persiano, who filed in Clark County, Nevada. And this is in 2021. So this has nothing to do with New Jersey. This is a Nevada problem now. And so the fact that it was filed in 2021 probably goes back a couple of years, but this is just to show you the culmination of him continuing to rip people off. He hasn't stopped. Now here's where the funny part comes in. Hold on, let me see. I just need to see if there's any other documents I need to pull up, and I don't think there is. Oh, just so that people want to know. Here's this is from his charges. Remember I told you he was being charged with only 2 counts. This is basically the 2 counts. 2 counts of wire fraud. That's it. That's it. But the important part, and this is the crazy part you guys are going to really just shake your fucking head at. Let me pull up another picture of Rat Boy. I don't know if you guys are even going to be able to see this. Share screen. Share. All right, let me there you go. There's douchebag in the middle. So here's the point. After all the information I just told you, right? This case goes back 5 years. They still haven't sentenced him, but we know when they do, it's not going to be much. He defrauded some 24 people. They have no recompense because they can't find him because the FBI still has him in Nevada or New Jersey, wherever he is. And so a lot of these lawsuits that are being filed, of course, there's going to be no response to that because they can't find him. You can't be served if you can't be found. And even if they get a judgment, good luck, because he's going to be given a new identity, a new address, a new social. He's going to get away with it. But this is the part I want you guys to hear. You're going to love this. So a lot of what he did was general contracting, right? He was a contractor. Now, I don't know about any of you guys that do construction, but I know that once you're convicted of a felony as a contractor, your contracting days are kind of over and you can't get a license. You can do stuff surreptitiously and not have a license or fake a license. You know, the FBI gave him a contracting license again, which was renewed as of 2022. Why would you give him a contractor's license when he's defrauded 24 people? That's what he's currently doing. He's contracting again. Now, I don't want to play silly here, but even the FBI kind of got to realize, even though they said from day one they didn't believe a fucking word he had to say, but there are people that are over top of supervisory agents, like in DC, that say, we don't care what your opinion is. Go out, go get whatever you can anyway, because they're so hell-bent on getting Al Capone out of fucking South Philadelphia. And I could go through that whole entire indictment again, and I can tell you everything he lied about in that indictment, because he lied an awful lot. And I'm not going to regurgitate all of that because I don't want to be here all fucking day. But they gave him a contracting license again. How do you, as an FBI agent, how does that even pass the fucking smell test? How does that, let's just give the guy who rips everybody off another contracting license. Let's allow him to make money when he's not paid a goddamn person back for anything he ever did. And say what you want about organized crime, say what you want about informants, put that aside for 1 second. This is just a moral question. How can the FBI sit back and allow some 24 people to lose their life savings, lose their homes, and not do a thing about it? Is arresting 15 guys worth watching 24 people lose everything they've ever earned and done nothing to justify? To get what? Gambling charges? Are you fucking kidding me? That's all this was. They allowed 24 people, 20-some people. Many of these people were defrauded after he becomes a federal cooperator because we have the bank account receipts to prove it of the money going in and out. You mean to tell me that arresting 15 fucking guys for extortion and fucking bookmaking and gambling, it's worth it not to throw this guy in the fucking dungeon and let him suffer for robbing and taking everybody's life savings away from them? This is your FBI at fucking work. And you people wonder why I have such a fucking problem with the federal government. I understand if you're going after Jeffrey Dahmer, Richard Ramirez, or Al Capone. I get that. John Gotti, I would understand that. But this, for gambling and extortion charges, fuck out of here. And what do people like my friend who got ripped off by him do? What do? He stole their money. And then they try to go to the feds. And the feds tell them, shut the fuck up. Stop talking. Oh, I'm sorry. He stole your money, but, you know, the team Fed needs him to rat guys out for gambling. For gambling. So some 24 people never get any recompense from the government because they wanted to arrest guys for gambling and extortion. Murder, I would get. There was no murder charges. There were no violent charges attached. That's how bad the FBI plays ball. And yet nobody's talking about it. They all want to sit on their little shows and talk about, this, that, and the third. But there are, believe it or not, whether you like me or not, there are instances that the FBI has done this to people. And so people like my friend and some 24 others that were wiped out financially can't do anything. Because even if they wanted to civilly sue them, they can't. Because they can't find the fucking rat bastard to do it. And then even so, what are you going to get? He's got nothing, but they're letting him contract again, which is hilarious to me. And 12 fucking times, they have moved his sentencing. And here's the fucked up part. They said in his deal, he's only going to do 3 years of supervised release or 3 years of house arrest anyway. And he might have to do 8 months in prison. You keep delaying it. This prick could have just fucking they could have just not kept delaying this and he'd have been done already. But for 5 years, they're going to delay his sentencing? I challenge anybody to pull up any federal case where this has happened before. Any fucking case. And if you had to ask me what my gut hunch is, it's not another indictment. They're stalling for a reason. Could it be? Sure. Of course it could be another indictment. But this also doesn't allow anybody who was ripped off to ever get that money back. And then you give him a contracting license. Congratulations, FBI. You're fucking scum. You're fucking scum. But more people need to come out and talk about this kind of shit. But they don't, because the way that the justice system is wired is as long as the name ahead of you is bigger than yours, they'll give you anything you want. They'll give you anything you want. And it's bullshit. And somebody has to stand up for those that got ripped off. And that's what I'm doing. All right, that's it. Catch us later on tonight at 8 o'clock, folks.